Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Whitetail Rendezvous is pleased to announce a partnership with GoHunt.com. Who's GoHunt.com? Well, if you're a DIY hunter, you need the information at GoHunt.com/insider. Why? Because it provides 4,200 profiles, every unit, every species, and every season. Furthermore, they give in-depth analysis, interactive maps, unit access, and seasonal trends. Draws are very important, and they give you the most accurate information in the business. All this is available when you go to GoHunt.com/insider. Make sure you use promo code WR when you join Insider. You'll get a $50 gift card for GoHunt.com Gear Shop. Remember, when you become a member of GoHunt.com/insider, you're going to get a $50 gift card to Go Hunt Gear Shop. What's in the gear shop? The best gear that you can buy for hunting the West. All in all, if you're hunting out West in 2018, GoHunt.com/insider is where you need to be to get all the research information. When you use promo code WR, Whitetail Rendezvous receives a small commission from GoHunt.com. Hey folks, welcome back. And this is part 2, or course 102 with Rackology, brought to you by Jason Obelmiller and Eric Fitzgerald from Loop City, Nebraska. In the first part, we talked about what is land management and discussed that. And if you haven't listened to that show, go to my website, whitetailrendezvous.com, and check it out. And so here we are. So somebody, I called you up a couple weeks ago, and we talked about this, and we came to a meeting of the minds. We thought, yeah, I'll share, lat lawn stuff, and you can take a look at, what I got, and then I want you guys to come out on my land, and we're engaged. You're consulting now. You're on the clock, and you might go one county, 100 miles, 200 miles. I don't know how far you go. I know you got a pro staff there, and so they might say, you got to, you need to come to see this guy where you're going to do everything possible to build your client list. And so, what happens before you actually get on the ground, and then what happens when you get on the ground?
Well, for me, I never used to be as techie as I'm not saying I'm really techie yet either, but my students have kind of been what's kind of spawned me into getting, into the technology as I have. And the thing that I always go back to, whether it's property that's 1 mile away from my house or somebody in 3 states away, is Google Earth. They may have aerial maps, which is great, but for me, it's kind of all a conglomeration of pieces of information. Aerial maps are great. Pictures that they snap on the ground with their phone when they're walking through the trees. I've had guys that have got unlimited data that are out in the trees someplace talking to me, and they're showing me stuff with their smartphones. But ultimately, once we kind of figure out where the property is, I like to get on Google Earth, and I like to look at what they've got. You can take it and you can tilt it and move it and go from different angles. And it really gives, once we find out what they want, and they can tell me on Google Earth, here's where this field is. It's corn this year. This is beans, or maybe it's all native grass. This is where a creek is. Once I know where everything's at currently, and we're at the most updated Google Earth setting, I like to use it because from above is where I can start assessing it. Okay, here's where the bedding area is. Here's where the feeding area is. Here's where their water is. I don't know how many guys that I've talked to that they've got great deer on their land, and they just cannot close the deal on anything decent. And I look at where their stands are, which, we'll talk about that this fall, stand placement. But you look at where their stands are, and they're nowhere's close to where the line of travel is from bedding to feeding. And older deer, especially older bucks, are like lazy old men, so to speak. We'd rather just eat, uh, get up, bedroom's right there, and we don't have to travel a long ways to go from place to place. And so by using Google Earth, you can really see from above where, their bedding areas, their feeding areas, and so forth. And so for me, besides boots on the ground, Google Earth is very important for me. I use it on all my scout going hunting anywhere. I use Google Earth, before we do that.
Can we take a break real quick? Yeah, can we pause real quick?
Well, we had a little technology glitch there, but we're back on, on site, and the guys were talking, Eric and Jason were talking about, using GIS stuff like Google Earth and aerial maps before they even get on your site, and that's one thing that everybody will talk about, but it's to my thinking, the more thorough you are with that process, the before getting to wherever a corner of Dusty Road and Rolly Hill, the better off you're going to be able to serve your client. What do you think about that?
I agree. I mean, going with what Jason was talking about, it's amazing how much we could do now with technology that we couldn't even do 5 years ago, or if you did, it was so expensive, and now it's cost effective. I mean, everybody's got a camera on the phone, almost everybody, GPS right on their phone. They can plot a couple points where some of the stuff is and move them to Google Earth and know exactly where they stood in that field. But it's just amazing how this technology has gotten more accessible, more economical, that about everybody could use it and use it to their advantage. But we do have guys that definitely are not tech savvy, and they're going to call us and say, I'll tell you, I don't have a GPS. I don't even have a smartphone, but here's the intersection of the roads that this section's on, or here's the legal description of the field. I can give you that, and then we do the work from there. So we deal with the guys that are on both sides of the spectrum when it comes that way. But when they, Jason talked about Google Earth and being able to see, the topography a little bit yet, and knowing where, when you look at a straight down aerial photo, you're going to get some pretty good ideas, but you're not going to see the lay of the land. You're just going to see the different land structures that are out there. And what I tell people too is some people will say, well, Google Earth, their maps are 5 years old. And there is some software out there that's very economical that has just year-old maps. So if you're more into trying to get, last year's map of your field, there's some stuff on there that's under $500 a year to get a full year subscription on something like that. And we use a lot for our agronomy side because we know fields change from year to year. Structures change a little bit. So I think it's important to, when they call us, we kind of have that at our advantage we could use. So if it's something they don't want to spend $500 a year, they say, well, here it is. You just print me a map out. Let me know what we need to do. But I think that's knowing getting a good feel of the property you're dealing with aerial maps and Google Earth or whatever the software, or having some pictures that they took out there and sent back. Knowing the intersection, I think that's key to start building a good plan for that piece of property.
Now, you mentioned Google Earth and topography. What are the things you look for in your pre-site visit?
Well, we definitely look for natural funnels. When we're talking about whitetail deer and managing for whitetail deer, every different species, you kind of look for different things. And Jason's definitely the biologist here and has done a lot of work and research on what to look for when it comes to whitetail deer. We definitely look for travel corridors. We look for funnels. We look for, if there are cornfields, if there are alfalfa fields here, you could drop a point in one spot and drop a point and know exactly how far away that deer has to travel, from this alfalfa field to what you think looks like a really good bedding area. You're looking for tree groves. You're looking for roads. The further, we all know this, the further off the road sometimes you get, the more secure those wildlife feel. And so you just kind of looking at different things and getting all you can from that aerial image to kind of help, uh, facilitate the plan that we're trying to set forth.
One other thing I really look for is, a lot of times you can't see this on Google Earth. For some reason on my computer, I can't tilt the screen much, but like on my phone, if you take both fingers, you can make Google Earth almost lay down. So you seem like you're looking over the top of the trees. And so a lot of times I'll be using my phone for that. And what I'm looking for before I'm actually there or the person actually is able to confirm it is you look at the tops of the trees or the tops of the brush, and I look for raises, like area where land is elevated, even by a foot or two. Because, for instance, a place where I hunt north of town here, it's even difficult to see it on Google Earth. But when you get in there, trees look fairly flat on the way to the river, but there's two spots. There's one where it's a slight ridge that goes through there. I think it's where an old channel had cut through. And then there's a low spot on the other side of it. And now that that's grassed in and it's not a slough anymore, those deer, especially the bucks, the bigger bucks, they like to use that. And again, they're only about maybe 1 to 2 foot below grade. And most people walking through there wouldn't see that. They wouldn't notice it. They wouldn't think that it'd be meaningless to most people. But to me, it's like you just put a bunch of red flags going through the trees, because those deer, even if they can gain a foot or two down lower so that the vegetation is a little bit higher on them, it makes them feel a little more secluded. Same way with, if you look at paths, I remember when I was younger, I'd throw a tree stand up on the biggest doe path going through the trees, and I seen a lot of does and a lot of little bucks. And it wasn't until I started noticing the bigger bucks are kind of off to one side or the other. They might be 60 yards or, give or take, whatever. And they're traveling on narrow little paths through the trees or through the grass. They're not on that beaten highway, because unless you're during the rut, bucks like to be a lot more secluded than the does. And so I look for little minute changes in topography, inside their area, as far as, to tell me, if we've got a ridge that's leading from this area over where their bedding area is, ending up coming out over here, but the feeding area is to the south further. That's still a game changer, because when we know where they're traveling, because of those elevated, pieces of ground, it's one more piece of the puzzle. Is that the answer? No. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's one of the things I look for, whether it's on Google Earth or when I talk to a person or, places where we hunt, is the elevation on their property.
And going back to it, I love satellite imagery. I mean, we're growing in leaps and bounds in the agricultural side on 1 meter resolution stuff and crop health index stuff. But this satellite imagery can tell you a lot of anomalies, whether there's a river or a pond or an area where they're going to go get water. There's a stock tank. Stock tanks are huge. Some aerial imagery, you could really see that the grass areas that butt up next to a riverfront that have been grazed down completely by cattle. And that's another thing that people don't want to hear sometimes when they're asked about land management. They also are a cattle operator, that sometimes you've got to leave some land that the cattle don't get in, because they do compete. And so you'll see stuff like that on these aerial imageries, and you can get a good and we could plot points on an aerial imagery map that maybe Jason and I look at. Okay, well, this might be a travel corridor. Let's kind of take a look at this. Here's a couple different anomalies that we don't know what's going on elevation or something. We plot those points, and then we have our homework done to when we get out there. We've never been out there before, so we don't know how to get from point A to point B without looking at the map. But if we have those points GPSed on our phone, we can get as close to 3 meters from where that point is that we want to look at. And so that technology is huge, and getting your homework done before you go out there. So when you do put boots on the ground, you're not wasting a lot of time doing what you probably should have done with aerial imagery.
Stomping around.
Yeah.
And another thing that's just kind of, popped in my head too is, the use of drones.
Mhm.
If it's something that, for the most part, a lot of guys, when they call us, they might be, because we're dealing with people all over the U.S. There's no way I'm going to make it out to New Jersey or Pennsylvania or anything like that here in the next couple of weeks. And so, we have to rely on Google Earth and everything. But if it's places where we can get, or if the landowner's got access, to a drone, getting a drone up above the area and being able to record some of it, that's as close to real time as you can get. And with today's drones, so long as they're licensed or whatever it is they got to do to operate it in their state, there's a lot of information that can be obtained using a drone. And I think, Eric uses drones in his agronomy business all the time to map fields. It's a game changer for him, and it's a time saver for him versus walking all these fields. Same way with land management. You can get these drones out there and really get a good lay of the land. It doesn't have to be super detailed, because ultimately, we're going to have to go into the property or they're going to have to go into the property really to get a perfect lay of the land. But that's just one other thing I was going to throw out there, is the use of drones. I think is another really good piece of the puzzle to use in assessing it.
And even when you get out to that piece of property, having that at your disposal is huge, especially for what might be considered an unaccessible area. You can get over there and look down and look across that piece of ground and know, I think this is where we could come in. This is where we could get equipment in. This is where we could do some work. And, a lot of things too is when we talk to people about this stuff, as much as we're going out and looking, we try to be discreet as possible. We're not out there yelling. We're not out there, getting sent all over the place. But what we like to tell our guys is if they call us and it's late September and they want us to go out there and do a bunch of assessment, we kind of say, well, if it's that important, we could, but we would definitely recommend waiting. If you are going to hunt out there, or you are having hunters out there, or you lease your property out to somebody. Normally we like to do this, late April, May, into June, before the grass gets really tall and it's hard to see stuff. And so we really try to get the time frame so it works best for everything. And we try to do it, in the off season for deer anyway.
So we're on the ground. We're, we got our points keyed into the GPS and we're ready to go. And so you guys come up, we meet, have a cup of coffee. And now we're on my ground. Yep. What should I expect?
Well, what we kind of like doing is definitely having the landowner or the person that called us there with us, because a lot of times nobody knows the ground better than the person that owns it, especially if they've been on it, they've been farming it, they're really familiar. Maybe they've been hunting it since they've been old enough to walk or carry a gun, but they just want some help saying, I don't know a lot about whitetail deer or what I could do. So we walk around with them. There's times when I first moved up to the area that I'm at now that there are some guys that just knew every nook and cranny of this county, and that's what you want. You want that landowner to know, okay, this used to be over here. These used to be really good. We used to have a stand over here. We used to see bucks all the time. To get that background information, if you can, and another thing to expect is, okay, have you done any food plots? If you have, where were they? Can we go take a look at them? And sometimes it's just taking a stroll and following that landowner the first time and letting him tell the story of that piece of property if he knows. And I think that's first and foremost. And then while we're walking is making the comments, and this might be a good idea here. This is a perfect location for this, from what I can see and what I can gather. Another thing is huge is trail camera photos. If they do have trail camera photos, if they have established corridors already, or if they don't know, I think setting up trail cameras on the property to start learning the paths of and the travel habits of deer is important. We might take few trail cameras out there, or if the landowner has them, we try to set them up in the areas that might tell us the best information. And just a good walkthrough. Now, granted, there's some pieces of property that would take 2 days to walk through. There's some you can be done in an hour, and so we just kind of see that, and we try to focus on the aerial imagery and the points we put out where this is what we're going to focus on. And you know what? And then we just start putting options on the table and seeing if it's feasible for the landowner to do, and if it's something he wants to do or she wants to do.
Basically affirmation of what we talked about on the, because we go over a lot of it on the phone with them, but once you're actually there, it's, okay, so here's the areas we spoke of, what do you think about doing this or that? That's where the ideas we spoke of on the phone, that's where we would start to, start the ball rolling as far as, okay, where would you want to do these things at? These are our suggestions. Here's kind of what you're saying. And a lot of times, I've looked at places on Google Earth, and then I get there and they're not the same. It doesn't look exactly, it's not the way you thought it was. And so you kind of have to start over once you do get there. Or if it's places where it's all by phone conversation where we never actually get to put boots on the ground. It's not until the landowner gets out there and says, okay, here's what I'm dealing with. I'm here now, and this is what we're going to start doing. But here's a little, possibly a hiccup, or maybe this is a positive thing. Here's a good deal we found out when we got out there. And so each scenario is just, it's totally different. I mean, getting back to kind of what we're looking for, also one thing just popped in my head, is when I'm looking at the edge of the tree line, I'm not one to put my stands clear back into the heavy stuff right away. I stay out of that as long as I can, if not always. I'm kind of an edge hunter. Deer are edge critters. They like to come out at dusk, and at dawn. And name for that's crepuscular, coming out at those time of days. And what I found is anytime there's just a slight, bend in the trees or an armpit, those are areas where I'm looking for, not only for stand placement, but for food plots, or, that's where a lot of times action is going to be. And those things stick out for me, whether it's Google Earth or whether I'm just standing right there, which you see it better from an aerial perspective. But
and that, going along with what Jason says, is when you're looking at everything above the ground, I guess one thing that Jason's better than I am at it, but in these days of tablets and phones, it's easy to just start jotting notes on a phone. But I still, Jason, like I said, Jason's better at this, note taking and having your 8.5 by 11 notepad there, and you're writing everything down, because some keywords that landowner might say, she might say, I don't want something over here. And you might forget it and try to, and then when we start doing the process, they're like, well, didn't you hear me? I don't want something over there. So that notepad. And then what I always carry with me, if we do go out and we do have boots on the ground, the agronomist in me is the first thing I'm grabbing is the soil sample bags and my soil probe, because we talk a lot about what's above the ground, but when we really get serious about placing food plots, pulling some samples and being able to, if we got 5 different areas we're looking at, being able to put the X's on some of them and the circles on some of them, because there's times where the soil might just not be the most economical thing. You might not get a good food plot, whether it be pH or whether it be soil CECs, or just maybe it's not even the lack of nutrients. It's just the shading isn't right. You might catch sunlight too much. And if you don't have enough rain, you look for them lower pocket areas that can maybe funnel some of the rainfall we get down to those lower areas. And so what I really like doing is pulling them samples and the sample cost is minimum to what they could tell you. And so what I do is when we're out there, we're pulling samples, and that way we know when we get the results back from the lab that here we go, this field here is not only good geographically, we looked at it, but as far as for soil health and for shading and catching sunlight when you need it, here is a prime example, whether it be a 1/4 acre plot or a 5 acre alfalfa clover mix plot. That's something I'm always got in my back pocket is some soil sample bags.
Sub-irrigated areas.
Yeah. Yeah. If you probe down in June and you still got moisture in that top 2 foot, that's a good sign, you know.
Even I know that.
Yeah. And that's where it gets back to the guy or the gal that really knows their ground and saying this is always way too wet or this, you know, and hearing them out. But notepad, you know, good set of ears, and, you know, tools at your disposal. And it could be compaction. You could try to get a probe in the ground and you can't even get it in the ground 2 inches. You know, you got some hard gumbo areas. So that kind of tells us, it sets it up for the next thing, which would be putting the plan in action. So that way we don't have to do a contingency plan. When a guy gets ready to put a food plot in, this just ain't working here. We kind of have that all taken care of, that we don't have to refer to that.
So if somebody's interested in getting in touch with you guys, what's the best way to do that?
Just shoot us an email. It'll be rackologyllc@gmail.com, or get on our website, rackology.org. And, you know, you can get a hold of us through there. Our phone numbers are on there, but email's probably the best just because during the day I teach science, he does agronomy. And so, you know, first thing would probably be to touch base through email and answer some questions that way. And then we can always, you know, get to phone conversation if need be. A lot of our questions that come in are just, you know, fairly simple. They get answered through email or, you know, and so forth.
And a lot of them, they just get on the website and look at the products, and it might answer the questions they might have. Mm-hmm. And we're also on social media. But the most timely, if you need something done and need something answered, or some information in a timely manner, emails.
Yeah, because we get messages on our Instagram and on our Facebook, and for some reason, you know, as techie as I think I am, there's times when it's 2 or 3 days later and all of a sudden my phone decides to let me know that I had a message from the other day. And I, you know, me being a teacher, I hate being tardy to, you know, getting back with people. So best way would be email.
And folks, go ahead.
Well, there's just time to hit on that. There's times that the social media just gets lost in the shuffle, and we don't want that to happen. So email, we can see when they emailed us, and we can got it, you know, get it on our phones. And if it's something simple, we could respond to that. So, yep.
And with that, folks, thanks, Eric and Jason. And we're going to roll into the plan. So, you know, we've kind of formulated why land management. We kind of formulated, you know, looking at your land, seeing your site, you know, getting a lot of input. Now we're going to come to the output stage, and the next segment of Rackology Land Management is coming up, and it'll be called The Plan. Hey, folks, a special edition of Whitetail Rendezvous is coming. I've asked 3 companies, Land & Legacy, Rackology, and Grandpa Ray Outdoors, to be part of a series on land management and food plots. So the next few episodes, about 18 of them, in fact, are going to be about either land management or food plots. Why? Because people have been asking me a lot of questions. So I went out and chatted with some guys, and Adam Keith and Matt Dye from Land & Legacy is joining the crew. And at Rackology, we have Jason Obermiller and Eric Fitzgerald. And rounding out the team is Grandpa Ray Outdoors with John O'Brien. Each of them is going to bring a different flavor on what is land management, what are food plots, why you need them, the pros and cons. So listen up to the next series, and I sure hope you like them. If you like them, let me know. If you don't like them, let me know what I can do better. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.